Okay, this is CUP 2018-24 and Zone 2018-20. I'm Kyle Kobe. I'm Associate Planner. What you see here on the aerial is an indication of the site. It is the site of the drive-in movie theater. You can see here the area that's being indicated for a zone change, and then the area in orange here that I'm outlining with the cursor is the site of the CUP. And I'm going to start off by just going through some of these images and then kind of get into the details that are in the staff report. This just shows, once again, what the surrounding zoning is. The dotted lines indicate the area to be rezoned. The proposal is to rezone this area to limited industrial, which you can see dominates a lot of the northern area here. And then a lot of the other zoning around here is residential, and this red indicates commercial. And these pictures are going to come from down here in this corner, in the southeastern corner, and then come around like this. There's several of them, so that's why I'm prefacing that. So southeast corner looking north, so you can just barely see the movie theater screen here, and then here's the residential over here. And this area right here is actually parkland between the two. This is just looking northeast, more directly at where the residential units are. Southeast, that same corner, I'm just standing in the same spot, just rotating around, looking east. And then this is looking southwest at the church that we'll see in a little bit closer detail here in just a couple pictures. This is just a little bit farther west along that same street. This is that same screen, the northeasternmost screen. This is at the intersection of the two streets in the southwest corner of the site. You can see here in the foreground the sign for the theater, and then in the background is obviously you can see the two screens back here. Here's the church that's across the street from the site. This is looking across the intersection at some of that commercial development. And this is just on the northern side of that same intersection, on the same side. This is at the northwest corner. So now we're looking at the back of this screen right here. You can just see it through the trees. And once again, over here is park, and then over here is the side of the drive-in. This is looking south from that same spot. Here's the drive entrance to the drive-in theater. There's a church located right over here. This is just to kind of indicate what's across the street on this side. Northwest, again, just to kind of give some context. And then looking northeast, here's the park that's just north of the drive-in movie theater. These are just some other, I believe that these pictures are in your packet as well. This is just to kind of give an aerial view for some context as far as the development that's around the area. This development right here is actually not a part of the CUP or the zone change. And then here's the new CUP that's being proposed. So what the applicant is proposing to do is rezone the area that I had indicated earlier that you can see here. As of right now, the parcel 1, which is the majority of the CUP, is split zoned. The northern part is zoned limited industrial, and the southern part is zoned general commercial. The rezoning part of this application proposes to change this to limited industrial so that all of parcel 1 is under the same zoning. And then the other major portion of this is to modify the acceptable or the permitted uses on the site from what it is now, which the current CUP states as just being drive-in theater, to other uses that are allowed within the limited industrial zoning district, subject to some of what you should find in your staff report, some of the restrictions that are placed on them as far as uses that are not allowed. Some other things that are occurring on the CUP amendment are updates to access controls, which have been done in coordination with planning staff and the traffic engineer. Brian Kuhn, the traffic engineer, has indicated that he is on board with the proposed changes. Staff recommends approval of this application subject to A couple of additional changes. First of all, provision 9B, 9C, and 9D applying to all parcels. These provisions deal with screening for, give me just one second here. Solid screening for outdoor work and storage areas, for rooftop mechanical equipment, and for trash receptacles. As the general provisions state right now, parcel 1 would be accepted out from those. Staff is recommending that the same provision apply to all the parcels in the CUP. We're also recommending the addition of a general provision that states all utilities should be installed underground, and that a pedestrian walk system plan is submitted for approval by the Director of Planning. I think those are all of the pertinent details. One other thing I do want to bring up is that there has been a lot of discussion about what this will or will not do with the drive-in movie theater. This will not, approval or denial of this request will not impact whether or not the movie theater will continue to operate for any amount of time. That is not under this. Approving this would not mean that the movie theater would stop existing, but denying it would not necessarily can ensure its continued existence. So I just wanted to address that because I know there's been a lot of talk about that, and I wanted to make sure that that was clear right up front. These updated provisions would allow for a theoretical expansion of the possible uses on site and nothing more.
Questions for staff?
Is the applicant in agreement with the changes?
I'm sorry.
Is the applicant in agreement with the changes?
I believe that they will explain some of they are on board with some of them, and they are not on board with one of the provisions, I believe.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, agent or owner, 10 minutes. Did I get that right, Mike?
Thank you. Russ Avey, agent for the applicant with Boffman Company. The one issue, we're in agreement with staff comments with the exception of the recommended change, the first condition. We had been working with staff. If you're familiar with the CUP, you'll note that it's a very antiquated and very, very extremely basic CUP currently. It has allowances of upwards of maybe 10 access openings along both frontages. It is very limited into the amount of development, site development restrictions that we would typically see in a CUP. And we discussed that with the client as far as what this property would lend itself to. And quite frankly, it's restricted just to simply, as staff mentioned, drive-in theaters. So we had the opportunity, or I had the opportunity, to come up with kind of an updated CUP. We were asking for expansion of the industrial uses within parcel 1, the dominant parcel, and in exchange we were offering up different requirements that we would typically see and expect in CUPs in the modern era. So we've added severe limitations, or we've cut back on those platted access openings. We've allowed different code requirements back on site, and we did do a fairly strenuous level of back and forth on the permitted uses that the plan provides for. So although we're asking for an expansion of industrial uses, we feel that it's going to be a relatively clean industrial development if and when the Starlight ever ceases to operate. I will also point out that I had an opportunity to meet with an old client, Bishop Cornwell of the First Pentecostal Church to the south. A number of years ago, we worked with him and his church to zone and expand zoning around their campus. In that meeting, one of the things that was stressed to me was the efforts that the church has made over the past 5, 6, 10 years to better the neighborhood, to make sure that nothing comes into the neighborhood that would be counteractive to what the church is trying to do in the area, that he simply asked us to try to be as good a neighbors as we could possibly be. And with that, we added some fairly customized screening requirements along specifically the hydraulic area, where we were trying to buffer any type of future industrial development in there. We came up and offered, I believe it's the general provisions that are in your staff report, the July 2nd list of conditions. In that, we simply ask your consideration to approve those voluntary conditions that we issued on the 2nd of July and not require parcel one those additional screening requirements that apply to the commercial, the undeveloped commercial portion, parcels 2, 3, and 4. We would be willing to, we're offering 1.5 times the landscaping requirements along hydraulic. We would be willing to even double that if necessary and go twice the planting requirements, and we're specifying planting size as well. And I just want to bring that to your attention for your consideration today, and I'll stand to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, Ms. Richardson.
Mr. Avey, I'm a little unclear about what you're asking with regards to screening and what the staff wants. Could you kind of go through that map there and show us what the differences are?
Yes, so there are requirements that basically break into 3 categories. So rooftop mechanical equipment is I believe 9C, trash receptacles, which should be 9D, and any type of outdoor work areas or outdoor storage areas would be discussed in 9B. We simply say that those, that we shall screen all those things within parcels 2 through 4 and exclude parcel 1. Within the requirement dictates that we would provide screening for any of those uses listed in those 3 sections within 150 feet of either hydraulic, MacArthur, or within that certain distance of residential. It would not affect anything along the northern property line. So we would basically have, this is a 60-foot buffer here automatically between the mobile home park to the east. So we would be looking at 110 feet along this property line. Pretty much 150 feet cuts off 2/3 of the northern tier of those parcels, but we're in agreement with that. And it would basically primarily impact development along this hydraulic frontage. If you're familiar with this site, we have quite a bit, and as Kyle's staff pictures showed, we do have screening and landscaping down here to this first major opening, the existing Starlight opening. So we are simply asking that in lieu of that screening requirement being applied to parcel 1, that we would be willing to screen through landscaping along the hydraulic avenue frontage.
Other questions?
So the issue is within parcel 1 primarily.
It's only within parcel 1.
Okay.
And it's primarily, in my mind, it stemmed from, this is going to be more of a warehouse distribution center potentially, just based on the fact that it's so close to the transportation network. A lot of the more nefarious stockpilings and those types of issues. We were told that we simply didn't want another Cornejo campus that's just north of the highway. Very visible, very tall, you can't help but notice that type of industrial development. So we were trying to limit it down in the number of uses, and really what we've seen here and what I think the Greater Wichita Partnership is looking for are the warehousing and transportation type of industrial uses. Which have loading docks, which have trash receptacles, and it's just a different type of commercial. We would fully expect the commercial parcels along MacArthur to develop in full conformance like any other commercial business would.
And so you're proposing to do screening more heavily all the way along hydraulic.
Correct.
To offset this.
We've already promised the church that we would offer that. In addition to some architectural controls, to make sure that we're not having naked galvanized metal, that we're going to have some sort of colorized buildings there that are going to be as harmonious with the general area as possible.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Foster?
I want to understand item 9 in your general provisions here real carefully related to screening. There along the park, the north side there refers to where adjacent to park property existing vegetation may be used to meet the condition of solid screening. Is that vegetation that's on the park property or vegetation that is on this applicant's property?
It is on the property line, like we see so many times with hedgerows, things of that nature.
Then, second question, I want to understand carefully, because the east side of parcel one seems to be what to me is the area of most concern, because it abuts to the mobile home park there, and they've got a fence that looks in not great shape. And, you know, a tree every 40 feet, frankly, just isn't going to cut it to get any kind of buffering there. So I think we need to look at whether there does need to be masonry or some type of fencing there, or this tree every 40 feet gets increased to actually indeed offer some buffering there.
So basically, that tree row, the existing tree row, comes about down to the zoning line. There's about a 300 to 320-foot gap here. I would argue, and this is splitting hairs, but we're not necessarily adjacent to residential zoning. We are adjacent to limited industrial and general commercial zoning, but we are within that 150-foot buffer area of those residences. I think we would have little problem doing solid screening. I think we would have major problem doing some sort of masonry wall requirement.
Now, you said something critical there. Is there a gap on this, between this property line and where the mobile home park starts? Is there a gap in
There's a
ownership
60-foot gap. We are not adjoining we are not adjoining that property. There is a 60-foot, now this is a 60-foot path that the park owns.
And did Kyle state that that was park property?
I don't know if he stated that or not, but it certainly is park property.
Okay, okay.
Now we have another question down here, Mr. Daly.
I'm assuming that that theater was there before the mobile home park. Is that correct, or do you have figures on that?
I do not know that. I've heard a yes
can-
from the crowd.
I can tell you it was, yeah.
Okay, I'm not familiar. This
That I remember
CUP,
it was out there by
I
itself.
believe the CUP and the plat were early 1970s. I'm going to say 72 or 73.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah. I hate to see your 6 minutes go to waste, is the
I think everybody in the room would love my 6 minutes to go to waste. I'll stand for any other questions you may have. It looks like there's some audience members here that I could probably.
owner doesn't want to speak, or, okay, just you. You're okay?
Just me.
You're done.
that-
All right, we'll open it up to public comment. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead to the microphone, state your name and address, and please speak into the microphone.
I won't be doing that.
Okay.
I'm not technical. My name is Melody Stuckey. I live at 2756 Mason Terrace, which is at the corner of Wassell and Hydraulic. We were hoping that this issue would come to neighborhood associations meetings. Ours is just a quarter mile from the north end of this property. And there's another one that just butts up against it, and I'm not sure what else. I didn't have time to find them all. But no one has come to any of our meetings and presented this information. We were also wondering, though, I'm also the secretary of the Neighborhood Association and a former president. But one of the things that we were concerned about is if the drive-in is going to stay for a while, why are we rezoning it, number one? Number two, why is it being rezoned light commercial? Because as many of you may be aware, we had a big debacle with Cornejos, as was mentioned just a few minutes ago. And we are concerned that we're going to have the same thing happen to us again, being told one thing and then something else happened. We're being told of the possibilities of things that can come in right now, and right now I would say that they do sound good, but we have had a bad experience with rezoning with a business here in Wichita, and as a result, we have constant pollution. So that's another one of our big concerns. I live on Wassel. I am bombarded with rock trucks all day long. One direction they're empty, the other direction they're full. Some of them are covered, some of them are not. And I think that's what we're trying to avoid. And I do appreciate the statement that in theory, that's what would be avoided. But in reality, we've heard this before, and we're not very trusting of what comes out in the end, because we have a big old rock pile and it's just dirty all the time. It's just constant dirt. So, those are our concerns. We would have liked to have had a presentation at our neighborhood associations. And I did understand this is going to the DAB meeting in August. And I will be there, but I'm not sure what will happen depending on what you do here today. So, I think that's all I have to say. Does
Questions,
anyone
please?
have any
Yeah,
questions?
any questions for the speaker? Yes, Mr.
I'd
Richardson.
like to have the staff answer her question about what the uses could be in parcel one compared to what's going on at Cornejo's place now. I think that's her general concern here.
I'm going to be 100% honest. I am not familiar with the Cornejo thing. I have not been here all that long. Maybe this is something that Scott or Dale could help answer as far as how this differs from that.
Cornejo is a concrete asphalt mixing facility with heavy rail, large piles of rocks, big trucks coming out carrying concrete, and they also, I think their headquarters is there as well.
Well,
So whatever is being proposed here would be the difference between what I've described and whatever you described.
so based on what I'm hearing there, one of the uses that is not permitted to take place on this site is asphalt plant. So I don't know if that directly addresses that particular issue or if there are other like smaller issues there. It's vehicle storage yard, kennels, animal care, pawn shops, nightclub in the city. There's a list of them, but I would say that our excluded uses should address those issues. But again, without being really familiar with the Cornejo thing, I just personally can't. Sorry.
Our main concern was just the south. Sorry. Our main concern is, of course, we don't want to repeat on the Cornejo. Oakville already got stuck with their rock crusher, and there's a lot of those kind of facilities in the south end of town. We just don't want the south end of town to continue to be used as a dumping ground for businesses that don't fit in Eastboro or Tallgrass or any place else. They're all coming down to the south end of town. And we may not be high-income people, but we do, a lot of us do own our homes down there. We've lived there. I personally have lived there 66 years, and that's how old I am. And so we just want something good there. We don't want, you mentioned cars. Yeah, I don't know that I'd want storage cars there either. If you're talking like a salvage? Those are excluded, okay.
Thank you.
Those are the kinds of things that we're trying to avoid. We just don't want junk and dirt and pollution anymore in our neighborhood. We have a really nice park next
Okay,
door
I
to
think we've
Chapin.
heard the
Is
answer.
my time up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I thank you very much for listening to
Okay.
me.
Way up, but we appreciated what you had to say. That's okay. We wanted to hear what you had to say. I'd like to ask the applicant if they would be okay with adding concrete plant, 'cause I don't think it's mentioned.
Yeah, I think this may fall back in just the way we defined certain uses in our code. I think it's just asphalt plant, and that means a lot of different things. Yeah, we would exclude any type of concrete batch plant and asphalt plant.
Thank you. Next speaker. No more speakers. We'll bring it back. And
I move to approve per staff comments.
we have a second.
That includes the change with the concrete asphalt?
The asphalt plant was already in there.
Yeah, but just to clarify, you
That's
allow
fine.
concrete too, yeah. And was there some modifications
And I
on
guess
this?
the other thing I want to say before it's probably could be a salvage yard. It'd have to come back in front of us as a conditional use for that, correct?
Yeah, so it would require an amendment of the CUP.
Was there anything else you wanted to add by way of landscape modification?
I think just go by what the staff said because it's 50 foot away from that mobile home park.
Okay, he had offered to make it more dense.
That's fine.
Is that okay? You want to add that?
The issue here is that the screening of outdoor storage and work areas as recommended by staff and as requested by the applicant are different.
Right. By staff, and you're going to stay at that. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Miles. Now we'll have some discussion. Seeing Mr. Foster.
Kyle, I want to make sure that we understand, the conditions, provisions provided by the applicant, how do they sync up, or how are those coordinated? Are they not coordinated at all? We just are looking at the
Can you
staff conditions?
Expand on what you mean by the word coordinated?
Well, sometimes in the past, we've done these where we take the applicant's provisions and just address those, and those become part of the case. Are we just ignoring those that have been provided from the applicant, or just going with what we have from the staff?
The way that I understand the motion that has been seconded right now, that's in front of you, is you would take the general provisions that you see that the applicant has provided in the staff report that you have in front of you. And you would take those, but you would also add in the ones that are recommended for approval by staff in the closing section of the staff report, where I list out the three things, the provisions for, or the amendment to general provision 9, as well as adding in the two other general provisions for a pedestrian circulation plan, as well as for there to be a provision that utilities be underground. So you take exactly what you see there that's been proposed, as well as the drawing that's in front of you right now, but then add in those things as well.
And that includes what the applicant raised initially about adjusting, was it 9B?
Yes, so if you were to vote approval of the motion on the floor right now, it would eliminate the part of 9B, 9C, and 9D where it says, basically the part where it says it's waived within parcel 1. So just pretend like it doesn't specify which parcels. It will now apply to the entire CUP. If you were to approve the motion on the floor now, the applicant is requesting that it remain as presented in the general provisions that you see their letterhead on.
Which I recall was taking parcel 1 out.
Correct.
Okay, so which one are we going with here?
Well, that's what's being recommended now is approval removing the exception for parcel 1. So if you were to say yes to what's being presented now, you would be saying that B, C, and D on general provision 9 would apply to all parcels. If you were to vote against that, that would be, well, it would just be voting against that, but the other way of doing that would be to take what the applicant has proposed, which is to accept out parcel 1. I don't know if that clarified it or not.
We have a motion, a second, and a clarification. So, any other questions?
Let's make sure that they took number 1 out.
And second, agree-
That is the staff recommendation, and the
Second
motion
agree
was
with
to
that, right?
approve.
I
per
thought it
staff
was, but he
recommendation.
had me halfway confused, so.
me too. So,
A yes, excuse me, a yes vote means that we are leaving parcel 1 in for all of the landscaping. Or we are accepting parcel 1.
A yes vote means that B, C, and D applies to parcel 1 as well. Yes.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Who? How many? 1. Okay,
Two.
2.
Who was the second?
Anybody else?
I didn't catch the second, I saw.
9 to 2.
Yeah, who was the second?
Hartman and Green.
Green? 3, that would be 3 then.
Well, I don't know.
No, I seconded the motion.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, she was pointing to help you out. Okay, so it passes 9 to 2. That concludes our public agenda. I asked Dale to comment briefly about a case that was brought up at city council meeting on Tuesday.
This would be the sand pit operation at 55th and Clifton. That was approved 6-1 with the requirement. The only thing they changed about your original recommendation was that they are requiring an on-site manager to basically police and make sure that the operations are complying with the conditions of approval. There was a lot of discussion about enforcement or lack thereof, depending on your perception. And
We had sent that there with 11-0 recommendation. The district advisory board voted after we had sent it to them, voted 7-0 to deny. Approved.
Did we not also recommend traffic to the south only? Was that,
yeah, they included moving the traffic from the northeast corner to the southeast, requiring the berm, fencing, all the things that you included. Yeah.
I attended the meeting but did not speak, so.
And they will have an on-site manager
Right.
then? Okay,
Yes, yeah.
that's good.
Okay. Any other for the good of the order? Seeing none, we're adjourned.